Hi everyone, and welcome to the Cybersecurity Sauna. My name is Janne Kauhanen, and I will be your sauna majuri and the host of this podcast. Thank you for joining us for another session where we sweat out the hot topics in security. Welcome to all listeners, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at Cybersauna. Until recently, AI-generated synthetic content has been more commonly used for gaming and art creation, where the tech is still relatively new and pixel perfection is unnecessary. However, with the tech rapidly advancing in complexity and speed, it's probably only a matter of time before it's genuinely challenging to determine if something is fake or not. Sometime soon, the tech may be so good that you can attend a work video chat in front of the camera in pajamas and ruffled hair, while your much more presentable synthesized avatar will be in view and your workmates none the wiser. Surely that's welcome news to many. However, the increase in technology also provides many possibilities for disinformation and other assorted nefariousness. We're joined today by digital artist and YouTuber Nerdy Rodent and WithSecure researcher Andy Patel to discuss how the technology is developing and its possible implications, good and bad. So Mr. Rodent, you do a lot of work with machine learning and deep learning and neural networks to create some pretty wild art, as we've seen on your YouTube channel. What drew you to that world initially, and what gets you excited as the technology develops?
Basically, I started off computing way back in the mid to late 80s. So been computing for a while, and there's obviously been a lot of things since then. And I kind of started with things like there was a spaceship generator in Blender a very long time ago. There's a procedural spaceship generator. I think that was about 7 years ago. And that and fractals, because I was basically interested in, okay, how do I generate images, pictures, any sort of visual when I can't actually draw and my artistic ability is so bad that I probably couldn't teach myself to draw. So that's kind of where it started. And initially I was actually going to do a game because I thought, okay, yeah, I've written games in the past. I'll do a game and it'll have some procedural generation in. And then things like No Man's Sky and all that sort of stuff came out. So it was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is interesting. How do I create art without artistic ability and have it non-repetitive? So I want something that nobody has ever seen before, and I want something that nobody has ever seen before every time.
Yeah, okay.
And so that was quite a challenge. So the thing that I found that kind of drew me into this world was this person does not exist. So that was only about 3 years ago now. I think that's sometime in 2019. And I was like, wow, these are really good faces. I'm struggling to tell the difference between this face and an actual photo of a face at the time, because it was still quite new.
Yeah.
So it was mostly this person does not exist that drew me in. And then I was like, all right, got to learn how to do this. So I was straight onto GitHub and it's like, oh, there it is. StyleGAN. Oh, brilliant. Yeah. I can run it on my own computer. Excellent. I've got to try this.
I do want to talk to you about StyleGAN, but before we go there, is it still sort of mostly the art, or has sort of your deep dive into the world of machine learning taken you down other paths?
It started as the art, but it certainly went down a lot of other paths as well. Once you get into that, you're like, well, hang on, I've just done this. I'm used to playing computer games and I've just done something with neural networks and deep learning. And you sort of feel a bit, I'm out of my comfort bubble now. But it does sort of start on the path to other things. So yes, had a look at all sorts of other deep learning and neural network related things. So you go into GitHub and it's like, okay, I'm just going to search for deep learning, neural networks and all this sort of things. You learn all the buzzwords, you search for all the things and you look through all the text and it's like, oh, what's this? This is a language generator. Hang on, I can use this to generate images. So I can get the AI to generate some text that will generate an image for me and I can barely be included at all. This is brilliant.
For me, the problem is every time I think I sort of start to understand what we're talking about a little bit, like these different terms, something new comes up. Like I've heard of GANs, but I haven't heard of StyleGAN. But it's popping up quite a bit. Like there's people talking about creating gen-generated faces, social media profiles. Can you explain to me and my listeners what StyleGAN actually means and some examples maybe?
There's a couple of things in the world at the moment. Transformers and there's GANs or generative adversarial networks. So a GAN is a little bit like the oft-used analogy is counterfeiter and somebody that detects counterfeit money. So you've got, in this case, it's an AI, it's a neural network that's trying to generate some fake money. And then you've got another neural network that says, is this real money or is this fake money? And that's kind of how it trains. So it makes a fake image. And then the detector says, is this fake or is it real? And that's essentially how the algorithm determines the loss. So it goes, oh yeah, that's too fake. I'm going to throw that away. Or yes, this is real. And the counterfeiter goes, aha, I have fooled you.
Okay. So there's a feedback loop. So it's not just generating a bunch of junk and then this other AI is sort of approving a minuscule part of that.
So yeah, it generates junk and the counterfeiter goes, that's junk. And it generates something that's slightly less junk.
Yeah, okay. So there is that learning, that feedback part.
Yeah, that's why it can take quite a long time. In the original days of Stargan, I'd basically leave my computer on for 2 or 3 weeks while it was training. So it used to be a very slow process.
I understand that the training can sometimes sort of fail because either the discriminator, the thing that's trying to figure out whether it's fake or not, gets too good. Mm-hmm. And so the thing that's trying to create the fake stuff can't catch up with it. So this sort of failure conditions can exist. And so sometimes you leave it training for some weeks and you get nothing out of it at the end.
Yeah, there's a lot of failure conditions in there. You can get something called mode collapse. Basically, the generator can do something like, it generates a fake image, and the discriminator goes, that's real. And then the generator goes, well, I'll just generate the same image again then. And the discriminator goes, that's still real. And the discriminator goes, yeah, ad infinitum. So you basically get all the same image in your network, and you're like, no, that's not what I want. I want some variety in there, please.
Sure.
Yes, there's lots of ways for it to go wrong.
So creating convincing deepfake videos, for example, like actual live moving images, has been somewhat time consuming thus far. But do you think that's becoming possible or will become possible at some point to do like on the fly?
Oh, most certainly. Yes, absolutely. Definitely. There's 2 components to it, really. First of all, there's the software, obviously, the stuff that can do it. And then there's the hardware that you're running on. So when I started out, I was on a very, very old NVIDIA card, a 1080, and that was like, okay, this is quite slow. And then eventually I got a 3090, and obviously there's the 4090 out nowadays. So as the hardware gets faster and faster and faster, then all these things just become kind of trivial. Even on the old software, just throw enough computing power at it and you'll be able to do it in real time.
Do you like to hazard a guess as to when we can expect to see real-time deepfake video created on like consumer grade stuff?
I mean, you can sort of do it now with things like Deepfake Live. So it's kind of already there. I think it's just going to get better from here on out, basically. So, next year, expect to see something amazing. And then the year after, expect to see something even better than that.
So most of us would have seen the deepfake video of Zelensky not that long ago where he's declaring surrender, and that was easily fact-checked and debunked and didn't seem like something he'd say in the first place. But what about when you go to lower level influencers, company CEOs whose likenesses could be faked to create chaos? You can certainly fight those somehow, but like, are you gonna actually expend the effort?
That's a very good question. Obviously, with high-profile people, like presidents and leaders of countries, then you're going to have a lot of eyes on it. But with lower level influencers, so to speak, not going to have as many people. It's not going to have as much reach. In some ways, I guess it's a little bit like the virus issue. So whereas a lot of people use Microsoft Windows, so most viruses are for Microsoft Windows, you're probably going to get the deep fakes that trend towards the people that everybody knows, like, Elon Musk and famous actors and people that everybody's heard of. Because if somebody sees a deep fake of a CEO, it's a very specialized attack. So it may be good in some ways. Well, when I say good, I mean it may actually work. It may actually do its thing. If you create very specialized deep fakes, or a lot of social engineering, perhaps if you can get information about the company, information about the specific CEO, and then create a very, very targeted attack, that may work. Whereas the broader ones with politicians and famous people, everybody can see it, and someone out there is going to go, no, that's just not real.
Are you envisioning a software that we have somewhere available, or is this a new profession that we have these sort of deepfake detectives that can tell me whether the stuff I'm seeing is real or not?
A lot of the time it's kind of down to us. And so companies nowadays tend to be teaching their employees about, how to avoid malicious actors, how to avoid spam, how to avoid this, how to avoid that. So you'll have training on what to recognize. And in an ideal world, somebody will see a picture of the CEO and they'll go, hang on, Mr. CEO, did you really say that? Or, Miss CEO, is this really a picture of you? And they can just go, no, that's not me. That's a deep fake. Or you can report it to your security department, who will then go, okay, I'll have a look at this. No, this isn't real. So yeah, I think reporting things, if it feels wrong, it's probably wrong. So report it to whatever department you've got that analyzes security issues, and they can do the legwork for you. So maybe in the future, we will indeed have specialist deepfake detection departments. It's like, have you noticed a deepfake report it to deepfakes@mycompany.questions.org or whatever. So, yeah.
I think we're going to need that because I'm going to be abusing the system. Every time I say something I shouldn't have said in retrospect, I'll go back and say, no, that was a deep fake. That was not me.
I can think of scenarios where deepfakes would be used against, let's say, regular people. I mean, you see a lot of videos in the US where police are brutalizing people, that kind of thing, right? Mm. Imagine if someone took a video with their phone and then deepfaked someone else's face onto there. How easily is someone going to debunk that?
Especially with the time constraints, like, we do deepfake swatting, and how much time are they going to spend establishing the authenticity of that video before the SWAT comes in?
Exactly, yeah. Imagine if there's like some sort of a protest, say like a far-right protest, and you deepfaked an employee of the company in that crowd and then said, look, this employee is doing stuff that doesn't line up with the values of our company, and then they get fired.
Would HR even look at that video before they fire my ass?
Right. There are multiple things you could do with deepfakes that don't involve politicians, celebrities, even CEOs, right? Just regular people. And if it becomes easy enough, then people could just use it to put other people in disrepute, to get them swatted, to get them fired, to get them piled on social media or anything like that, right?
Okay, so it takes a minute to create these deepfakes, but how hard is it to tell if an image or video I'm looking at is deepfake?
Most of the deepfakes that we see, like the Zelensky deepfake, are of poor quality, and it's easy for majority of people to determine that those are deepfakes just by watching them. The Elon Musk one's also a similar thing. But then people have made very good quality deepfakes, like the one they made of the Queen. And those would be more difficult to determine. Of course, those are always presented as this is a deepfake, we did this on purpose. But like in terms of programmatically determining whether something is a deepfake, that sort of detection mechanism is still in its infancy.
Well, there's a couple of things you can do depending on particular software. So, for example, Stability AI, when they first, or CompViz, when they first released Stable Diffusion, they put a thing in there called an invisible watermark. So it made it really, really easy to tell whether an image had been generated by their program or not, because they could just check for the watermark. So if you've got software that creates deep fakes that automatically adds some sort of hidden tag in there that something can detect and say, this is a deep fake, then it can be relatively easy. But obviously not all software is going to do that. So you're going to have to figure out what it is that you can check that makes it a deep fake. And I think there are funds of money available out there for people that solve that problem.
Are there shallow fakes? Like, what's the opposite of a deep fake?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of this shallow fake versus deep fake thing. So, I mean, I do a lot of research into disinformation on social networks. And I mean, you can see almost daily someone debunking what could be considered a shallow fake. And these things typically follow very similar patterns. It's either like a screenshot of a tweet that's been edited, a newspaper headline that's been misrepresented or edited, or a piece of video content that's also been misrepresented. So, for instance, a few years ago when I was studying stuff on Twitter just before the Member of European Parliament elections, there were a bunch of videos that were posted by a couple of accounts that were of immigrants, like vandalizing things, and those videos were misrepresented as this just happened in Italy or something like that, when in fact the video was from a different time, from a different place, and so on. So these sort of things, people cherry pick this sort of stuff. I remember also some years ago, just before the 2019 general election in the UK, there was some sort of a terrorism incident in London where a guy with a knife stabbed some people and the police came along and shot him. And so one fabricated a tweet from Jeremy Corbyn saying, an innocent man was killed by the police today. It was actually shared over like all social media. So, I mean, since it was a screenshot of a tweet, it was, posted in Twitter, but it was also posted in Instagram and Facebook and everything. And of course, people believed that Jeremy Corbyn had tweeted that, and there was outrage. And by the time that stuff gets debunked, people already believe it.
Yeah, okay, but like misinformation aside, I feel that there's one possible use case for GIS created by AI is sometimes media, you need B-roll. You just need pictures of something. Might not have to be the same thing, but you just need to have a picture there because a text with picture is more impactful. So do we think that we might see media outlets start generating images that they need? Because if you can just have a model and you tell it to give you a picture of a frozen lake, then you don't have to go out there or go log on to a picture bank and find that picture.
Yeah, I mean, there was the big one that springs to mind. I think it was, it might have been Cosmo. It was some magazine anyway. And an artist had generated a picture of an astronaut striding on the moon, and they'd used that for the cover of their magazine. It might even have been Time. It was some famous publication anyway. So yes, I mean, it has been done already, but another use case is you can just use the AI as inspiration. So as an artist doing that, you can go, give me a picture of a lake, and it will give you 10 pictures of lakes, and you're like, oh, I quite like that one. You know, I can trace this, and I can take some aspects of that. And so, yeah, just using it as a muse.
So how much content do you need to sort of train one of these models for either still images or audio or video?
A lot. Lots and lots and lots of content. When I was first starting out on StyleGAN, I'd start with 3 to 5, maybe 20,000 images, whereas the professional models by people like OpenAI and Stability AI are trained on millions, sometimes even billions of images. So there's a lot of data that you need in order certainly to create the image models. The same with the text models. That's a lot of text. They tend to train it over the entirety of the internet, things like that. So you get like the 6B models, which are 6 billion parameters. They tend to train it on the internet, basically. So they go, all right, take every article in Wikipedia, take everything on archive.org, take all this information that humankind has already created, and we'll use that as the data set. Similar things for voices as well. There's a few voice data sets out there, and those are also very large. They've got lots of different speakers, predominantly English for the most part, but there are some other language data sets. So yes, the data sets do need to be very, very, very big.
Yeah, and I guess the more the better. But what about things like video, for example? Do you want like different lighting conditions, different camera angles, things like that?
Yes, all of that. Yeah, every possible variation is quite good to have in there. There are some AIs that use video, and you'll pass it like a 10-second clip. So yes, you want to have as many different clips and snips of videos to give the AI all sorts of different things. It doesn't understand reality. It doesn't understand what's going on in the real world. It doesn't know what light is or what reflection is or refraction or anything like that. So if you can sort of recreate a variety of conditions and say, okay, a face can look like this, or this, and maybe a person can have a shadow, maybe it'll be here. You know, there's so many different places for shadows to be in. So yes, the more data you can give it, the more the AI will understand what's going on.
But I think that's crucial. You say it doesn't, like, even with all this training material, it still can't sort of extrapolate that, okay, well, light seems to be working like this and that. It just sort of cargo cults its way through. Like, I saw an image that had a shadow like this. Let me do that on this image as well.
Yep. There was a very interesting case I remember reading about where they were trying to get an AI to recognize different animals and things, and they were going between a wolf and a dog, and they were going, okay, is this a wolf? Is this a dog? And it was getting it very, very close. It was very good, and they were like, oh, this is interesting. You know, how is it determining whether this is a wolf or this is a dog? And wolves are in the forest and dogs aren't.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
It's always the simple case.
Yeah. These ones have a collar on.
Yeah. It was things like that that were just not, it's not how a human works.
Right. Do you think we're far from being able to create convincing, realistic-looking live video from text so that I can say, give me like an image or a video of what like a car crash would look like?
That's probably quite close. If you've got a lot of hardware to run it on, that's one of the constricting factors is how fast can I process this? And previously, StyleGAN videos, for example, it would take, well, it used to take me like a week or so to train. That would get me the model, and then I could produce the videos reasonably quickly after that on a trained model.
Sort of similar videos.
Yeah, but they'd take like 5 or 10 minutes. And those would just be basic interpolation. So you'd just be going, wandering around the latent space, basically. So it wouldn't be a car crash necessarily. So you couldn't have a sort of scene where you've got a normal car and then it turns into a crashed car unless, you trained lots and lots of normal cars and crashed cars on your GAM and you're interpolating between those images. Even then it wouldn't look real because it's an interpolation, not how actual physics works and things like that. And I think physics is probably the big downfall at the moment of anything generated. So things like water and bouncing balls and deformation, anything like that is going to be quite tricky because for the most part, it doesn't understand physics. It's just been given a selection of pictures and some text. And there's no correlation between that and reality.
Yeah, this is maybe the part that's a little bit unclear to me still. So sort of you first have to have the sort of the model that sort of generates the content that you want to see, and then it becomes faster to just run it through its paces and sort of get outputs that you sort of want to see.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the training part takes ages. Like, for example, Stable Diffusion, I think they used several hundred NVIDIA GPUs to train it over a period of, weeks or months or something. So yes, there's a lot of money and compute power that goes into these things.
Okay, so Andy, Nerdy, what's happening in the space right now? What's exciting? What's happening next?
Well, certainly for me, it's all about Stable Diffusion because it's like DALL-E, but for the people. So they've open sourced it. They've given out the model. There's all the code there. So that's what's taking up a lot of my time at the moment. And I think people are trying to get videos and animations and all that sort of thing in there. They're adding things like the Dream Booth from Google's Imagen. They're sort of doing variations of that so you can add yourself into your own models quite quickly. So taking that very long training OpenAI and others have done, Stability AI, and just adding a few more pictures in of you or your favorite cat or your dog or anything like that. So yeah, Stable Diffusion is where I'm looking at the moment. And there's a lot of other text to image models coming out as well. So they seem to be coming out rapidly. So I expect there'll be another one in a couple of weeks and I'll jump on that.
What about you, Andy?
There's a couple of interesting things going on. I think with the next version of This Person Does Not Exist.com using like StyleGAN 3 or something, according to the people who are working on it, it won't generate these faces where the eyes and teeth are in exactly the same place. So you can overlay the images and determine that they're all GAN generated. And it might be able to generate more than just portraits, so more than just head and shoulders. And that's going to make determining whether someone's sock puppet account on social media is using a GAN face much more difficult. The other thing I think is exactly these word processors that are starting to use natural language generation models in them. You know, I mean, I see it as somewhat of a novelty right now, but as these models get better and better, we're going to end up with tools that aren't just a word processor where you can have it come up with the next paragraph for you, but that can answer questions, do maths, maybe even come up with hypotheses, things like that. You know, that's like a researcher's assistant that you might be able to interact with in the same way that they interact with a computer on Star Trek.
Man, you guys, we haven't talked about threats too much that we usually talk about on this podcast, but you've taken me on such a trip that I just want to, thank you for being with us today and just introducing certainly me, but hopefully some of our listeners to this very interesting topic. Thanks, guys.
Most welcome.
Yep, thanks.
That was the show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please get in touch with us through Twitter with the hashtag Cybersauna with your feedback, comments, and ideas. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe.